So, Apple's about to do something this fall that almost guarantees a wave of internet outrage. They're going to release an iPhone that looks basically the same as last year's iPhone. And I think that might be the smartest thing they've done in a while. I know, I can already hear the keyboards warming up, but stay with me. Here's why that's not the take you think it is. This fall, Apple's lineup is going to be unusual. The more expensive models, the iPhone 18 Pro, Pro Max, and the brand new iPhone Fold, are expected to launch in September 2026, while the standard iPhone 18 and iPhone 18e get pushed to early 2027. That alone is a scheduling shakeup Apple has never really done before. It's like showing up to Thanksgiving in October and telling everyone else to come back in January. And when you combine that with the fact that this will be the first foldable iPhone ever, you start to realize something. The iPhone Fold is launching alongside the Pro models this fall, and it's clearly going to absorb most of the spotlight, which means the iPhone 18 Pro is walking into its own launch event, potentially playing second fiddle. Imagine training for the Olympics and then finding out your sibling is also competing in a cooler sport. Now, what caught my attention was this. At the beginning of 2026, rumors surfaced that the iPhone 18 Pro might come with some major design changes, but those were later brushed off as being lost in translation. A fresh leak from Digital Chat Station further reinforced that Apple may not be pushing for under-display Face ID with this year's flagship. At first, this sounded minor. Another leak, another correction, business as usual, just another Tuesday in the Apple rumor mill where everyone's an insider until they're not. But here's where the conflicting reports make this interesting. Some leakers, including Ice Universe, have claimed the dynamic island will shrink by about 35%, going from roughly 20.76 millimeters to 13.49 millimeters, with Face ID's flood illuminator moving under the display using a new LTPO Plus panel. That would be a genuinely noticeable change, the first meaningful reduction to the dynamic island since it debuted on the iPhone 14 Pro. But then Digital Chat Station dropped a different claim. According to the latest supply chain rumors, Apple may actually be reusing some of the iPhone 17 Pro molds for the iPhone 18 Pro. If that's true, the dynamic island might stay exactly the same size and shape. No shrinkage, no under-display migration. So which is it? Honestly, it's not totally clear yet. And that's kind of the point. This is where the leak cycle gets messy, and most creators just pick the version that gets the most clicks. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Apple may be testing both approaches and hasn't locked in a final decision. That happens more often than people think. Companies this size don't finalize design 6 months before launch because a leaker on Weibo said so. That's like locking in your wedding menu based on what your friend's cousin's caterer posted on Instagram. But regardless of how the dynamic island shakes out, the design of the iPhone 18 Pro will reportedly be largely unchanged from the iPhone 17 Pro. Same overall shape, same 6.3 and 6.9 inch display sizes, same camera plateau on the back. And that's where the internet is going to lose its mind. You can already see the memes being drafted. Someone's probably already made a side-by-side comparison with the caption, "Spot the difference," and honestly, they'd be right. Visually almost identical, but visually isn't the whole story. Those memes will be missing the point. Now, before we get into the internal upgrades, there are a few design changes happening that are easy to overlook. First, the rear glass. The iPhone 17 Pro's two-tone look, where the glass and the aluminum frame didn't quite match, has been polarizing. Some people loved it. Some people looked at it like a pair of shoes that almost match your outfit but don't quite get there. According to Weibo leaker Instant Digital, the iPhone 18 Pro will feature a redesigned back glass that minimizes the color difference between the glass and the aluminum panel, a seamless, unified look. So, Apple heard the feedback. They're essentially making The back of the phone looked like one continuous surface instead of a craft project. That's a subtle fix, but the kind of thing that matters the moment you hold the phone. Second, the colors. Apple is reportedly testing three new Pro colors: coffee brown, purple, and burgundy. Mark Gurman from Bloomberg also reported that Apple is testing a deep red finish described as a rich burgundy. And here's the kicker: there might not be a black option this year. Again, that's 2 years in a row without black on the Pro line. Apple really woke up and said, you know what the world needs less of? Options people actually want. I'm joking, mostly. The cosmic orange on the iPhone 17 Pro was a massive hit, so clearly Apple's strategy of bold colors is working. But no black? That's a choice. It's like a restaurant removing water from the menu. You can probably still get it, but it feels weird that they're not offering. Third, the camera control button is reportedly being simplified. No more swipe gestures, just a pressure-sensitive button. That's actually a welcome change. The original camera control on the iPhone 16 Pro was one of those features that sounded incredible in the keynote and then in real life made you feel like you were trying to pet a hamster on a roller coaster. Less is more. And apparently there are also design changes to the rear ceramic shield for MagSafe charging, potentially with a more frosted glass appearance, plus the ability to browse the web via satellite. We'll come back to that one. Now here's where the pattern recognition kicks in. Apple used to have a very deliberate rhythm. The iPhone 4 was the redesign. The 4S was the refinement. The iPhone 5 changed the shape. The 5S perfected it. The iPhone 6 went bigger. The 6S made it better. TikTok. Redesign, then refine. It was basically Apple's version of leg day. You don't skip it, you just alternate. That strategy kind of disappeared after the iPhone 12, which kicked off a design language that stayed largely unchanged for years. The 12, 13, 14, they all sort of blurred together visually, like sequels to a movie where even the actors forgot which one they were in. But the iPhone 17 Pro, that was the most significant visual overhaul in a long time. The clearer pattern here is Apple's going back to TikTok. The 17 Pro was the tick. The 18 Pro is the talk. And honestly, that doesn't look accidental. And this isn't some uniquely Apple thing either. Samsung, Xiaomi, Oppo, Vivo, virtually every major manufacturer sticks to a design for at least 2 years before making significant changes. Expecting Apple to reinvent the exterior annually wouldn't just be unrealistic, it would be inefficient. That's like expecting your barber to invent a new hairstyle every visit. Sometimes the fade just works, you leave it alone. So if the outside isn't dramatically changing, what is? This is where it gets interesting. The A20 Pro chip built on a 2 nanometer process, a larger battery with over 5,000 milliamp hour capacity, LTPO plus display panels, camera aperture changes, and the C2 modem are all being called out as strong selling points. That's not a small list. That's like saying nothing changed and then handing someone a completely rebuilt engine. Let me break down the chip first because this one genuinely matters. The A20 Pro will be built on TSMC's first generation N2 process. This is the first time a 2 nanometer chip would ship inside an iPhone. That's a genuine semiconductor milestone. The kind of thing that engineers celebrate with fancy coffee and a deep exhale. It introduces gate-all-around nanosheet transistors, replacing the FinFET architecture that has dominated for years. In practical terms, TSMC has outlined expected gains versus 3 nanometer, roughly 15% higher speed at the same power, or about 25 to 30% lower power at the same speed. The A20 Pro is internally codenamed Borneo Ultra, which sounds like either a chip or a very expensive candle. But here's the part that makes this different from a normal year-over-year spec bump. The A20 Pro reportedly uses TSMC's wafer-level multi-chip module packaging. What that means in plain English, RAM gets directly integrated on the wafer with the neural engine GPU and CPU. Everything talks to everything faster, more efficiently, and in a smaller footprint. Basically, all the components moved into the same apartment instead of shouting across the hallway. This approach is expected to deliver improved Apple Intelligence performance and better battery life, and Apple has secured more than half of TSMC's entire 2 nanometer capacity. That's not just buying chips, that's reserving the factory. Apple basically said, we're not sharing, which is the kind of move that makes Qualcomm, Samsung, and MediaTek mildly uncomfortable. Now pair that chip with the battery. Supply chain information suggests the iPhone 18 Pro Max battery capacity will reach around 5,000 to 5,200 milliamp hours, which would be the largest battery ever in an iPhone. The device might also become the heaviest iPhone yet, reportedly pushing past 240 grams. The Pro Max is getting a little thicker too, going from 8.75 millimeters on the iPhone 17 Pro Max to 8.8 millimeters. That's a tiny increase, much smaller than the jump from the iPhone 16 Pro Max at 8.25 millimeters. So the thickness trend is slowing down, but the battery is growing. A more efficient chip plus a bigger battery. That's not a spec sheet flex. That's a daily use improvement that every single owner will notice. The kind of upgrade that doesn't photograph well for Twitter, but absolutely matters when your phone's at 40% at 11 p.m. instead of dying at 6 p.m. like it personally has somewhere to be. The LTPO plus display panels are also worth mentioning here. They're more power efficient than current panels, which means the screen itself draws less energy. Combine that with a 2 nanometer chip and a bigger battery, and you're looking at what could be the largest single year battery life improvement in iPhone history. Not because of one thing, but because three things are all pushing in the same direction at the same time. It's like when your diet, sleep, and exercise all align for one magical week, except this time it lasts. And then there's the camera. According to analyst Ming-Chi Kuo, the main 48 megapixel fusion camera on both iPhone 18 Pro models will feature a variable aperture for the first time on an iPhone. That means a mechanical system with aperture blades that physically adjust the opening diameter to control how much light enters the sensor. This gives you more granular control over exposure and depth of field. It's a meaningful optics upgrade, not a megapixel race, because at some point, adding more megapixels is like adding more lanes to a highway. It doesn't fix the traffic, it just makes the file sizes bigger. Now, there is a caveat. Given that iPhones have smaller image sensors due to smartphone size constraints, it's unclear exactly how meaningful the variable aperture improvement will be in practice. Apple is also reportedly considering a teleconverter alongside the variable aperture lens, which could improve zoom reach at the cost of light intake. So the camera story is promising, but with some real world asterisks. And there's one more piece people aren't talking enough about. Apple is expanding its in-house modem rollout, with both the iPhone 18 Pro and Pro Max expected to feature the Apple C2 baseband chip. That's Apple's third generation modem, following the C1 in the iPhone 16e and the C1X in the iPhone Air, and it marks a further step away from Qualcomm. Somewhere at Qualcomm headquarters, someone just felt a chill. The C2 could add support for 5G satellite connectivity using NRNTN, which stands for New Radio Non-Terrestrial Networks. This could allow the iPhone 18 Pro models to offer fuller internet access over satellite when standard networks are unavailable. One leaker even described 2026 as the pivotal launch point for satellite connectivity across various smartphone manufacturers. I initially thought the modem story was just an internal supply chain move. Apple cutting ties with Qualcomm, saving costs, nothing user-facing, but satellite internet on a phone, That's not a behind the scenes optimization. That's a feature category that didn't exist on iPhones 2 years ago. 2 years ago, if you lost signal in the middle of nowhere, you just accepted your fate, maybe wrote a letter, considered becoming a hermit. Now your phone might casually connect to space. We're living in a sci fi movie and nobody's reacting appropriately. Also on the feature list, an N2 wireless connectivity chip, which is Apple's next generation after the N1 that enables Wi Fi 7, Bluetooth 6, and Thread. The details on what N2 improves are still thin, but it's another piece of Apple's in house silicon strategy expanding. Now, here's something that surprised me: the transition to TSMC's 2 nanometer chip manufacturing adds approximately $35 per chip in production costs, a 70% increase over the current 3 nanometer process. Some reports even suggest the A20 could cost as much as $280 per unit, and Apple is expected to absorb that cost rather than pass it on to consumers. That's a deliberate margin hit. And what this tells me is that reusing the iPhone 17 Pro's design isn't just a TikTok philosophy decision, it's also a cost management strategy. You save on manufacturing, tooling, and molds on the outside, so you can invest in significantly more expensive silicon on the inside. The trade-off is real and it's rational. It's like renovating the kitchen instead of repainting the house. Nobody sees the plumbing, but everyone notices when the water pressure is incredible. Analyst Ming-Chi Kuo has been consistent on this point. Apple's plan is to avoid raising prices as much as possible, with Kuo predicting Apple would at least keep starting prices flat compared to the iPhone 17 Pro models. That puts the Pro at $1,099 and the Pro Max at $1,199. Same price, better guts. I don't know about you, but I've never returned a meal because the plate looked the same as last time. And that brings up the question nobody in the leak cycle ever asks: who's actually buying this phone? It's not iPhone 17 Pro owners. Almost nobody upgrades year over year. If you do, no judgment, but also your bank account is looking at you with concern. The people buying the iPhone 18 Pro are coming from an iPhone 15 Pro, maybe an iPhone 14 Pro, maybe even older. Some of you are still on the iPhone 12 acting like everything is fine, while your battery icon has become a permanent anxiety trigger. For those people, the 18 Pro isn't a talk, it's a massive leap. New design, new chip architecture, new modem, bigger battery, better cameras. They're going to walk into the store, and the only thing they'll stress about is the color, which, given Apple might not offer black, could actually be quite stressful. Online discourse optimizes specs. Most people optimize comfort, reliability, and is this noticeably better than what I have? The iPhone 18 Pro answers that second question easily for anyone 2 or more generations back. Here's the other strategic layer that makes this work. The arrival of the iPhone Fold, expected to start at $1,999 or more, quietly repositions the iPhone 18 Pro Max as the sensible premium choice. Compared to a $2,000 foldable, $1,199 starts to feel like value. Apple really said, let me put a $2,000 phone next to a $1,200 phone and watch people feel responsible for spending $1,200. That's not marketing, that's behavioral psychology with a receipt. And there's another detail here that nobody is flagging. This fall, anyone who wants a new iPhone will have to spend at least $999. There will be no affordable option at the fall event. The standard iPhone 18 and the iPhone 18e won't arrive until spring 2027. So Apple is essentially saying this fall you're either premium or you wait. It's like a nightclub that only opens the VIP section first and then lets everyone else in 4 months later. That's when it started to look different to me. Apple isn't neglecting the 18 Pro. They're creating a 2-tier excitement structure. The Fold gets the spectacle, the Pro gets the substance, and for anyone who wants something genuinely radical and new, Apple's saying, Here, go buy the Fold. For everyone else, we refine the thing you already loved. It's actually a clever pressure release. The people who complain every year about not enough change finally have somewhere to go, and the people who just want a great phone get exactly that without paying for novelty they never asked for. So here's what I think the real story is. The iPhone 18 Pro isn't the headline phone this year. It's not supposed to be. It's the backbone phone, the one that sells 70 million units while everyone's debating the Fold's crease. It takes last year's most successful design, fixes the two-tone back, adds new colors, keeps the price stable, drops in a generational chip upgrade on the first 2 nanometer process ever in an iPhone, adds LTPO plus displays, improves the camera optics with variable aperture, packs the largest battery in iPhone history, simplifies the camera control button, and ships Apple's next gen modem with satellite connectivity. That's 12 features. That's not a boring upgrade, that's a disciplined one. And in a year where Apple's also launching its first foldable, asking the Pro to also carry a dramatic visual redesign would have been spreading ambition too thin across too many products. That's like asking your best employee to also plan the office party. Just let them do their job. The companies that try to make every product the hero every year are the ones that eventually ship something half-baked. What this tells me is Apple decided which product gets the spectacle and which one gets the substance. And for most buyers, the ones who don't spend their weekends in leak threads, the substance phone is the one they'll actually carry for 3 years. The memes will come, they always do. Someone will make a side by side with the caption, "Corporate needs you to find the difference," and it'll get 40,000 likes. But memes don't move 200 million units a year. Strategy does. Catch you next one. Peace.